It was supposed to be a night of celebration, not humiliation. My parents were about to mark their 40th wedding anniversary, and the entire family had been invited to a grand dinner at a rented hall downtown. Golden lights twinkled across the room, and the faint music of a live string quartet floated in the air. Tables were decorated with white roses and candles, and everyone dressed as though this was the wedding of the century rather than a simple anniversary. For days, I'd gone back and forth about attending. My relationship with my sister, Melissa, had been strained for as long as I could remember. She had a way of making me feel small, invisible, like the family mistake rather than part of the family tree. But this was my parents' milestone, and no matter how she treated me, I wasn't going to let her keep me away. I owed it to them to show up, smile, and pretend, if only for one evening, that everything was normal. I arrived early, in a navy blue dress I had bought just for the occasion. Simple but elegant, my hair curled, a touch of perfume on my wrist. I wanted desperately not to give Melissa any new ammunition. For once, I wanted to feel like I belonged. The room filled quickly with relatives, uncles, aunts, cousins I hadn't seen in years. They hugged me politely, made small talk, and then drifted toward Melissa, who always seemed to shine brighter in their eyes. She was the successful one, the perfect mother, the golden daughter. She loved holding court at family events, her voice carrying as she told stories of her son's achievements, her husband's promotions, her vacations to exotic places. I stayed quiet, as I usually did, watching from the sidelines, sipping from my glass of water, forcing a smile whenever someone glanced my way. It happened halfway through dinner. Plates of roasted chicken and vegetables had just been set down, and conversations buzzed with warmth. My nephew, Jacob, Melissa's son, was darting between tables, clearly hyped up on sugar and attention. I smiled at him when he ran past me. He was only 10. He didn't know better, or so I thought. Suddenly, he stopped behind my chair. I didn't notice until it was too late. A splash of cold liquid soaked through my lap, spilling down the front of my dress, dripping onto the floor. The shock of it made me gasp. I looked down to see dark soda staining the blue fabric, spreading like an ugly wound. Gasps erupted from nearby tables. And then Jacob's voice rang out, loud and gleeful. "Mom said you don't belong here." The words cut sharper than the cold drink ever could. The room went silent. Every head turned toward me. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. My chest burned as heat rose to my face, humiliation flooding through me. I turned slowly toward Melissa. She was standing across the table, a satisfied smirk tugging at her lips. She didn't look shocked. She didn't scold her son. She didn't rush forward to apologize. She just watched, like she had orchestrated the entire thing. "Jacob!" my mother hissed, horrified, standing quickly to grab napkins. But Melissa only raised her glass of wine and took a slow sip, her eyes never leaving mine. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me whole. People whispered. Some avoided my gaze. A cousin laughed nervously, muttering something about kids being kids, but I knew. Everyone knew. Children repeat what they hear at home. That wasn't Jacob's cruelty, it was Melissa's. I excused myself from the table, my hands shaking, and rushed toward the restroom. Inside, I locked the door and stared at myself in the mirror. My dress clung wetly to my thighs, the stain impossible to hide. My eyes shimmered with tears, threatening to spill. How many times had she done this? How many times had she made me the family joke, the failure, the outsider? And still I showed up, hoping each time it would be different. This wasn't a child's prank. This was war. I cleaned myself up as best I could, dabbing at the dress with paper towels. The soda smell lingered, sticky and sour, like the bitterness of Melissa's words. When I finally returned to the hall, conversations had resumed, but the atmosphere felt different. People looked at me with pity, some with amusement, none with real concern. Melissa caught my eye and smiled sweetly, as though daring me to challenge her. I forced a smile, sat back down, and ate in silence. But inside, a storm was brewing, because I knew something Melissa didn't. She thought she had embarrassed me, broken me, reduced me once again to the role of family scapegoat. But what she didn't know was that I had been preparing for months. Preparing for the day I would no longer take her cruelty, and if she wanted a war, I was ready to give her one. The anniversary dinner ended with speeches, laughter, and cake. My parents beamed, oblivious to the undercurrents. They hugged me tightly when I left, thanking me for coming, telling me how much it meant to them. I smiled and kissed their cheeks, but inside I was already planning. Melissa had crossed a line. She wanted me gone from the family picture. She wanted me humiliated, erased, forgotten. But I wasn't going anywhere. And soon, everyone would see her for who she truly was. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jacob's little hands tipping the soda, heard his shrill voice cutting through the quiet room. "Mom said you don't belong here." It echoed in my head like a curse, like a verdict I couldn't escape. But worse than his words was Melissa's face. That smug, satisfied expression. That tiny, victorious smile she wore as though she'd finally proven something. She wanted me humiliated. She wanted me to leave broken. She wanted to erase me from my own family's story, and maybe that had worked in the past. Maybe I had let her. But this time, something inside me hardened. I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, sipping cold coffee, the blue dress still hanging from the chair with its ugly brown stain like a scar. I stared at it for hours, remembering all the little slights, all the whispered comments, the pitying looks from relatives, the way my parents brushed it aside with, "Oh, that's just how she is." No more. I wasn't going to let Melissa dictate my place in this family anymore. The next morning, I called my friend Danielle. She and I had met years ago at work, and though we were no longer colleagues, she remained my anchor, a tough, outspoken woman who didn't let anyone walk over her. I told her everything. She listened quietly, and when I finished, she said in her blunt way, "Then fight back. Expose her. Don't let her hide behind her golden girl mask." "How?" My voice cracked. "If I fight back, I'm the bitter one. The jealous sister. The failure. Everyone will say I'm just making drama." Danielle paused. "Then you don't fight with words. You fight with truth. Real, undeniable truth." Her words stuck with me, because I had truth. I had years' worth of it. Melissa's perfect facade had cracks. She wasn't the flawless mother she pretended to be. She wasn't the devoted wife, the successful woman everyone believed. She had secrets, things she had told me once when she needed someone to listen, things I had stumbled across by accident. At the time, I had kept them buried because I still believed family loyalty meant something. But now I realized loyalty had only ever gone one way. I opened my laptop and began digging. Old emails, messages she had accidentally forwarded to me years ago, photos, receipts, evidence she never thought I'd keep. My heart pounded as the puzzle pieces clicked together. I wasn't imagining it. Melissa wasn't perfect. She was reckless, careless, cruel, and I had proof. Still, I hesitated. Revenge sounded sweet in the dark hours of the night, but in daylight, I questioned myself. Was I really ready to expose her? Was I ready to burn bridges, risk the fallout, maybe even lose my parents' support? That weekend, the decision was made for me. I had agreed to join my parents for brunch at their house. When I arrived, Melissa was already there with Jacob. She gave me that same smile, mocking, fake sweet, and leaned down to whisper as she passed. "Surprised you showed your face." "Bold of you." Her words pierced, but I kept my face calm. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. But then Jacob piped up again, this time at the table. "Mom said Auntie doesn't have a real family because nobody wants her." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My parents gasped, their eyes darting between me and Melissa. But again, she said nothing. Just shrugged, as if kids will be kids. That was it. That was the moment the last thread of restraint snapped inside me. After brunch, I drove straight home and called Danielle again. "I'm doing it," I told her. No more silence. She didn't even hesitate. "Good. You want help?" "Yes," I whispered. "I think I do." Together, we planned. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. My parents, still glowing from their anniversary, had decided to host a larger family reunion in 2 weeks. Extended relatives, neighbors, friends. A backyard gathering with speeches, food, and photos. Melissa, of course, volunteered to help organize, which really meant she would bask in the spotlight once again. But this time, she wouldn't be the only one controlling the narrative. I spent those 2 weeks quietly gathering. Printing copies, saving screenshots, compiling the evidence like a lawyer preparing for trial. Melissa thought she knew me, thought I was the quiet one, the pushover, the sister who swallowed insults and walked away. She had no idea that quiet didn't mean weak. Quiet meant calculating. Quiet meant patient. Quiet meant I had been listening and remembering all along. The day of the reunion arrived bright and hot, sunlight pouring across my parents' yard. Tables were set with food, kids darted between chairs, laughter filled the air. Melissa wore a flowing white dress and looked every bit the picture of perfection, holding her wine glass as she greeted guests. I waited. I smiled. I played along until the moment came. My father tapped his glass for attention, thanking everyone for coming, talking about the importance of family. Melissa hovered beside him, nodding gracefully, eyes glowing as if this entire event revolved around her. When he finished, I stepped forward. My voice was calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. I'd like to say something too. Dozens of faces turned toward me. My hands shook, but I kept them steady against my sides. I've always believed in family, I began. I've always wanted to belong here. But belonging isn't just about showing up. It's about how you're treated. Melissa shifted, her smile faltering. And I think it's time people see what really happens behind the perfect image. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I reached into my bag, pulled out the manila envelope I had prepared, and laid it on the table. Inside were printouts, photos, copies of texts. Melissa's hidden debts, her late-night rendezvous with someone who wasn't her husband. The nasty emails she had sent about family members, the very people smiling at her right now. Gasps erupted, faces turned toward Melissa, her smile cracked, her skin paling. I looked straight at her. You told your son I don't belong here. But maybe it's time we ask who really doesn't belong. The silence was deafening, and in that silence, for the first time in years, I felt something shift. I felt power, because I wasn't invisible anymore, and this was only the beginning. The silence in the yard was heavy. Like the air before a storm breaks, Melissa's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the patio stones. The sound rang through the gathering like a gunshot. No, she gasped, shaking her head, her perfect smile crumbling. This is fake. She's lying. But no one looked convinced. Uncle Ray leaned forward, his brow furrowed as he scanned the papers. Melissa, these are your messages. That's your email address. Cousin Emily's face drained of color as she spotted her own name in the highlighted text. Emily is pathetic, always desperate for attention. Her hand flew to her mouth. One by one, relatives read the evidence. Each page revealed cracks in the golden mask Melissa had worn for years. Whispers swirled, eyes narrowing, hands pointing. I stood tall, heart hammering but steady. For once I didn't shrink. For once the spotlight wasn't Melissa's to control. Is it true? My mother asked finally, her voice trembling. Melissa's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her gaze darted wildly, searching for an ally. She turned to my father, her in-laws, anyone. But all she met were hard, disappointed stares. Jacob tugged at her dress. Mom? His small voice cracked, confused, scared. Melissa yanked him close as if shielding herself behind him. This is all her jealousy, she cried, pointing at me with shaking hands. She's bitter, she's alone, she's always hated me. You can't believe her. I swallowed hard, but my voice didn't waver. I didn't want to do this, but you left me no choice. You used your son to humiliate me. You poisoned him with your words. You tried to erase me from my own family, but the truth has a way of surfacing. The yard was silent again, except for the soft flutter of papers as the wind tugged at them. Danielle, who had agreed to come as moral support, stepped closer and placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "She's telling the truth," she said firmly. "And Melissa knows it." Melissa's husband, Mark, had been quiet until then. He stepped forward, his face grim. "Melissa, I warned you. I begged you to stop spending, to stop lying." His voice broke. "But this I can't forgive." Melissa spun to him, her eyes wide, desperate. "Mark, no, please, you know she's twisting this." He held up a hand, cutting her off. "Enough." And that single word carried more weight than all her protests. Melissa's mask finally shattered. Tears streamed down her face as she crumpled to her knees, clutching Jacob to her chest. But even her tears seemed hollow, rehearsed. Like another performance no one believed anymore. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt sorry. She was still my sister. But all I felt was release. Years of swallowing insults, of shrinking myself, of being the butt of her cruelty. They lifted from my shoulders in that moment. For the first time, I wasn't the weak one. I wasn't the outsider. I was free. The fallout was swift. Melissa left the reunion early, dragging a sobbing Jacob behind her. Mark stayed behind, speaking quietly with my parents, his face heavy with shame and betrayal. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of hushed conversations. Relatives approached me, some with apologies for not seeing sooner, others with gratitude for exposing the truth. I nodded, accepted their words, but kept my responses short. My chest felt light but also raw, like a wound finally lanced. That night, my phone buzzed with messages. Some relatives cut Melissa off completely. Others confessed they had long suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to stir trouble. My parents sat me down, their eyes weary but soft. "We should have listened," my mother whispered. "We should have protected you." For the first time in years, I let myself cry in front of them. And for the first time, they held me like they truly saw me, not as the background sister, not as the fragile one, but as their daughter. Melissa didn't give up easily. She tried to spin her story on social media, painting herself as the victim of a jealous sibling. But screenshots don't lie. People recognized her handwriting, her email, her words. The more she fought, the more credibility she lost. Eventually, Mark filed for separation. Friends drifted away. Invitations stopped arriving, and Melissa, once the flawless queen of every gathering, found herself alone. I didn't revel in her downfall, at least not in the way I once imagined. Watching her unravel wasn't satisfying. It was sad. It was tragic, but it was also justice. Months later, I found myself at another family gathering. This time there was laughter, warmth, no tension humming under the surface. Kids played freely. My parents smiled without forcing it, and when someone raised a toast, they looked at me. "To family," my father said. "To belonging." The words struck me deep, because for the first time in years, I truly felt like I belonged. As I sat there, surrounded by love, I thought of Melissa. I wondered if she sat alone in her quiet house, replaying the night everything fell apart. And I realized something. Belonging had never been about Melissa's approval, or anyone else's. It had always been about me, finding my voice, standing my ground, refusing to let someone else write my story. Melissa tried to erase me, but instead, she erased herself. And I finally came home,